Just one question. Who gave you this calculation? I don't see a name on here.
Yeah, there wasn't no name. That came when I did an open records request through DAS, and Ryan Lamb assembled a group of documents for me. That was one of the documents. My email, I think I asked for the calculations from the layoff plan, you know, the cost savings analysis, if you will. I don't recall the exact verbiage, but that is what I got.
Okay, and no idea where he got it from?
I do not know. Correct, I do not.
Okay. Then just a follow-up for all of you, and I'm sorry, I think we lost somebody. What was your job performance review before you were laid off? All three of you. What was your history of your performance review?
Mine was exceeds expectations, I believe, on both of my last reviews.
And you were reviewed by?
Dean Ibsen reviewed me, and I believe bosses changed, and after I believe Paul Carlson reviewed me at one time as exceeds, I think.
And you exceeded expectations?
It may have been Dean twice, I can't recall. Yes, but it was exceeds expectations, yes.
Mine was exceeds expectation, except for the last one who reviewed me with Paul Carlson, and Paul said that he talked to Doug, and Doug said that nobody should ever receive exceeds expectations. It's not possible. So.
He told that to you directly?
Yes, sir.
On my last one, and this is very controversial, it was exceeds expectations on technical and all of that, and then there was something about client relationship, and Paul had called me into his office once about the juvenile home, and he says, I have a full page of complaints about you from the juvenile home. And I said, really, that's interesting. Because I really hadn't been going there anymore. Craig Dykeman had been the on-site guy. He lived there during the week. He stayed in Toledo. And I did the paperwork and occasionally would go to meetings when asked. And the list was crazy. It was handwritten. And I said, why is that handwritten? And he said, oh, it was dictated to me, but he wouldn't tell me who by. And it was things like looking at my BlackBerry during meetings. And I did once, maybe, but the other meetings were, I would give Craig Dykeman a ride in the beginning of the week and the end of the week because he doesn't have the vision, he cannot drive. And so the quote meeting was, well, come on inside, and he was doing a download in the manager's office, and I was sitting there twiddling my thumbs waiting to give him a ride home. So this was all fabricated. Paul treated me very differently than the guys. He was on my case about everything. He'd call me on the phone, and I was a few cubes away, and say, come to my office. And I said, what project is this about so I can grab the right folder? He says, no, just come to my office. And it would be something dumb like, do you know how to use Excel? And I said, yes, everybody does. He says, well, can you show me how to do this on my computer? And I was showing him, and he goes, you don't know how to type, do you? And I said, I try to avoid that. That's why I became an engineer. He says, well, I thought all women knew how to type. And so this thing was just horrible, and a client had never complained about me, and it even said that I had a tantrum and got up and ran out of a meeting. And I said, I've never in my life done this. And so I was on site again talking to the manager, and he said, do not tell anybody about this. And so I went and talked to her, and she said, well, you know, let's just continue. Like, it wasn't a big deal. Well, lo and behold, it hit my review, and it was like everything exceeds or meets and then does not meet. And so I didn't get a raise while everybody else got 4.5%. I think it's part of the reason my wages were lower than everybody else, even though I'm a licensed engineer. And it was terrible. And then he'd say that, oh, the legal counsel at the time, oh no, she had become COO. this is before Doug Woodley, and said, oh, Pat Lance told me that she wanted you fired. I said, really? And so Dean helped me arrange a meeting with her because I had to list all my meetings so Paul knew about them, and we didn't want him to know I was going to see Pat because he had told all of us to not ever go above him and talk to anybody, which we always used to do with contract questions and things like that. And then it got down to don't talk to anyone at level A in DAS, and then it got to don't talk to the other project managers and compare notes, because as soon as he came on board, he canceled all our staff meetings. So, yeah, I had a bad review, and it was all trumped up, except the BlackBerry thing.
Okay, so you, and I'm just trying to collect thoughts here. Do you think this was done so that we didn't get to whistleblower status? For protection?
I don't know. I don't know what that rule is, if it says that you don't have any bad reviews at all.
No, it just protects you. You say
Okay.
something.
Now, I did question why my entire review would have been a bad review, because there were 5 elements, 4 of them were very good and 1 was very bad. And I talked to someone over in HR and they said, no, a supervisor doesn't have to say the whole thing's bad because there's 1 element. It's up to the supervisor.
So clearly you were targeted.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing that he did was we had to assemble a lot of paperwork for contracts to be processed, any document involving money. And I'd go into his office and mine were 3 inches thick and the other project managers were like this. And so I compared with a couple, and at the same time period, they didn't have to have half of what I needed. And I couldn't get around that. And then Paul would say, well, why do you live so far away? And I said, well, my husband works in Carroll. Lake Panorama's halfway between the Capitol Complex and Carroll. It's just where we live. And so I'd come in a little later, but we were all on flex time. There were some project managers you didn't see for weeks because they were out in the field.
Thank you very much.
Senator McCoy.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up and again, thank you all for being here, because, you know, it was not an easy place to come today. You all have jobs, you've moved on with your life, and well, so what I'm trying to say is, you know, for those that have asked you point blank, do you feel you should return the money? I'd like to answer that question by saying, first of all, that I don't think any of you violated your confidentiality agreements. I think the Register did an open meetings, or a Freedom of Information request, gathered this information and released it to the newspaper. At that point, those confidentiality agreements, which were illegal, became null and void, and you are invited guests of the Senate Oversight Committee. We have invited you here today to hear your story and to try to blow some of the stink off of this bad arrangement. And anybody that would suggest to you that you somehow violated your agreement by being here today, they're going to have to come between me and you to get to you, because I'm going to be there to defend you in every way that I can from the perspective of doing what is right. What has happened to decency is beyond me. When employees are told, you're out of here, get your stuff and go. I mean, that's what's happened to these employees over at the state. September 1, 2011 represented the September massacre of the DAS, and anybody that had any institutional knowledge was driven out of the department for whatever reason. And we'll get to those reasons tomorrow. But I believe that the reasons involve cozy relationships with either personnel or vendors that will be disclosed tomorrow as we gather the detail. But I thank you for having the courage to come today and for having the courage to talk to us about what really happened over there. I'm embarrassed by it. I'm embarrassed for the state of Iowa. I'm embarrassed for the Department of Administrative Services. I'm embarrassed for the Branstad administration. It is a shame.
I want to thank you as well for coming today, and I know it wasn't easy. Tony, I did call you, and I know you didn't answer my call, so I didn't call you back. I want the committee to know that each of these guests who were invited to testify were invited by the Legislative Services Agency, and they did not receive invitations from me to attend today's meeting. I appreciate the information you gave to us. I think it helps us build a better background as we go in to question the director of the Department of Administrative Services tomorrow. I come from a business background. I cannot imagine getting rid of that much intellectual capital to reorganize. And I think the testimony provided today will help us look to how can we put this equation together better of did the state truly save money by losing that institutional knowledge, that oversight over multi-millions of dollars in contracting. And I want to thank you again on behalf of the Senate Oversight Committee. Seeing no other questions, Senator Shane John moves to adjourn.